Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, we are about to start this program. And we apologize for starting late because of the inclement weather, unexpectedly. And that is Allah's work. We now have a Quranic recitation and I follow as Mohammed.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين وإن عاقبتم فعاقبوا بمثل ما عوقبتم به ولئن صبرتم لهو خير للصابرين واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تكو في ضيق مما يمكرون إن الله مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون صدق الله العظيم.
Now have Sister Fraser give us the meaning of the Quranic recitation.
So the last sentence recited here is from chapter 16, verses 125 to 128. Invite all to the way of thy Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in ways that are best and most gracious. For thy Lord knoweth best, who have strayed from his path and who receive guidance. And if you punish, let your punishment be proportional to the wrong that has been done to you. But if you show patience, that is indeed the best course for those who are patient. And do thou be patient, for thy patience is but from Allah. Now grieve over them and distress not thyself because of their plots. For Allah is with those who restrain themselves and those who do good. Amen.
On behalf of the Markaz al-Ihsaan, I cordially welcome you to this very, very interesting topic pertaining to Islam and the issues that are affecting Islam in the world today. When I first saw this topic, it kind of hit me that this is exactly what is happening throughout the world. It's unfortunate that we do not have a much larger crowd to expound on this topic, to gain more information from other leaders, other group leaders, as we express our own thoughts and comments on this issue, on these issues actually. So, on behalf of Markaz al-Ihsaan, I officially welcome you to this interesting lecture and all the series of lectures that Markaz continues to expose to the Islamic community and the larger communities. At this point, we would like to have the opening dua. I call on Haji, Mohammed.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. O Lord, grant us sabr, steadfastness, prayer, perseverance, and take us from this world only when we are Muslims. Allahumma inni as'aluka ridaka wal jannata wa a'udhu bika min ghadabika wa min an-nar. Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsi zulman kaseeran wa la yaghfiru dhunuba illa anta faghfir li maghfiratan min indika warhamni innaka antal ghafurur rahim. Allahumma inni as'aluka min fadlik. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Amin, amin, amin. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Thank you very much, Haji. As I mentioned earlier, the topic of interest, and to express, I now invite Imam Shuffy Mohammed to expound on this topic.
All praises are for Allah, Lord and Master of this universe. I testify that there is none like him, and he sent Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, as the perfect leader and guide for all of mankind. When we look at the messages Allah has given us in the Holy Quran, we can't but help and reflect on chapter 96, verses 1 to 5, which were the first revelation that was sent to Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. And this tells us, proclaim or read in the name of thy Lord and cherisher, who created man out of a leech-like cloth. Read, and thy Lord is most bountiful. He who taught the use of the pen, taught man that which he knew not. In examining these verses, we will see that the first revelation contains a specific instruction, and that is, the Prophet, upon whom be peace, was commanded to read. I am not going to go into the tafsir of all of this today, but what I would like to remind you and myself is that all instructions given in the Quran, it is not only for the Prophet, upon whom be peace, but it is for all of mankind throughout the ages and generations, when man will continue to come into the earth, as long as the earth and man will continue to exist. And when we look at this, you will find that when the human being learns to read, there is so much that he can benefit from just reading. And we will look at this clearly as we go on. Allah also tells us about the creation of the human being from a cloth, and out of the generosity of Allah, he taught man what man knew not. Allah exalted man by giving him knowledge, and it is the dignity of Adam whose knowledge distinguished him over the angels. We can't help but conclude from this that reading is important to us, as it encourages the acquisition of knowledge. My brothers and sisters, the acquisition of knowledge requires perseverance and patience. So the first experience of knowledge our Prophet, upon whom be peace, was exposed to was in the cave Hira. For those people who have been to Makkah and who would have had the fortune to climb the cave Hira, to look at it in a video to see where it is, you will find that this is a very difficult trip. And I myself wonder how the messenger, he had to be a very strong and powerful man. Just if we look at climbing that hill to get there, and the acquisition of knowledge came dear to him. So when we look at this, we see the companions of the Prophet, upon whom be peace, they used to make similar sacrifices, and they did so with patience and perseverance. And their sacrifice was that one Sahabi, at least one, must be there with the Prophet, upon whom be peace, all the time, so that they can observe and that they can learn and know what is the status of Islam, because the Prophet, upon whom be peace, was demonstrating this physically to them every single day of his life. Perhaps this is why Allah says in chapter 16, verse 96, "And verily we shall pay those who are steadfast a recompense in proportion to the best of what they used to do." So the people who persevere with patience and are steadfast, the Mufassirin have commented on this verse here by saying that, in a nutshell, according to the best deed you do, that is the reward you are going to get for your deeds in the hereafter. So look at the status that the people who are steadfast and those who go out in the path of Allah and who seek information about Islam and pass it on, what they are entitled to. You will find that presently the effort to acquire Islamic knowledge is becoming almost nil in the lives of the Muslims, and we need to bring back this into focus in our lives. The Messenger of Allah, he taught Muslims, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. In my own life, I have been learning Islam from as long as I can remember. I am still doing so today. Every day I keep learning. You know what? If you don't do this in this business, you'll get left back. The younger ones will come up and overtake you, and then you will be lost to know what they are speaking about and what is the information about and so on. So knowledge is a long life process, and this is why the Prophet, upon whom be peace, says, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. We can't stop learning. I remember in our school here, we have had one gentleman, he was 80-something years old, and he never missed a Saturday. The man came for 5 years straight, and he never missed a single Saturday. Unfortunately, just before he died, I think just before it was time for him to graduate, as an alim from this institute, he passed away. So we say that may Allah bless his soul today. And even today, we have some very old people who still come and they make effort. One celebrated his 80th birthday about 2 weeks ago, just about 2 weeks ago. So we still have old people. My brothers and sisters, my quest for knowledge has taken me on a journey from Massahood Junction to Pleasance Park in Pointe-à-Pierre, to Mayaro, to San Fernando, to Carapichaima, to Hermitage, to Avocat, and to so many places in this country. This took a lot of sacrifice with patience and perseverance. But today I can tell you that I have no regrets in all how I have spent my time Islamically, because it is so rewarding and fulfilling to me. When you teach a student and you see that they can recite and that they can tell you so many Islamic things, you get the satisfaction of the effort that you put out. This is something that only those who make sacrifice in the path can experience. My brothers and sisters, during this period of time, and even now in my life, I wish to thank Allah tremendously, because He has been extremely kind and generous and loving and merciful towards me. And I say, Alhamdulillah, for all the mercies that he has shown to me. To the Muslims of today, you will find that life is very demanding. And when we look at the busy schedules, you have work, studies, and all the commitments that go with success in this life. So you will find with this busy schedule, many people have no time for Islam. When we graduate from a secular activity, we get our BSc, our BA, our MSc, MA, and so on. We qualify for a monetary reward because we know that we can get a job, and at the end of that, we get a salary, and that helps us to live in life. When we study Islam, what is the reward for us? This is the big problem in the society because people cannot fathom the reward as it cannot be measured in dollars and cents. You know, a lot of people tell you, boy, time is money. So we have to make it sure that we make use of the time and make as much money as we could. My brothers and sisters, let us look at some rewards when a person would study Islam. When we do so, we get an opportunity to fulfill a command of Allah, which Allah gives us in chapter 66, verse 6 of the Holy Quran, in which he says, O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is men and stones. We will need to have knowledge of the religious prescriptions, which are the do's and the don'ts, to implement this command of our Lord. The result is that if we try hard, yeah boy, sometimes when we tell the children, they go buff us. We're telling me this and we're telling me that, and you only talking this and talking that about God. And we have to study and we have to do this and we have to do, all these are the things that the younger ones will say. But they have to take some time, and we are not knocking anybody. These are physical things that happen in our families. We have to take some time and still remind them. Yesterday we were teaching one class on dawah. And you know, we reached a chapter in that topic of dawah in which even Muslims forget the duties that they're supposed to do. And we have to give them the dawah as reminders. Be nice and kind and polite and gentle with them. And we have to keep reminding them, just as we remind everybody else. So you will find here that when we acquire knowledge, we get an opportunity to fulfill this command that Allah has given us. Our noble messenger, upon whom be peace, gives us some beautiful benefits of Islamic knowledge as follows. He said, acquire knowledge. It enables its possessor to distinguish between right and wrong. It lights the way to heaven. So that is the first hadith. The next one is, he says, that one who treads a path in search of knowledge has his path to paradise made easy by God. Riyadh Salihin, page 245. There are other benefits as well. Narrated Abu al-Darda, he said, that I heard the Apostle of Allah say, if anyone travels on the road in search of knowledge, Allah will cause him to travel on one of the roads of paradise. The angels will lower their wings in their great pleasure with one who seeks knowledge. The inhabitants of the heavens and the earth and the fishes in the deep waters will ask forgiveness for the learned man. The superiority of the learned man over the devout is like that of the full moon over the rest of the stars put together. The learned are the heirs of the prophets, and the prophets leave neither dinars or dirhams. They leave only knowledge, and he who takes an abundant portion of it, he is one of the inheritors of the prophet. So, my brothers and sisters, if we examine this hadith alone, we will see, look at the benefits one can get from acquiring Islamic knowledge. I hope with these few words I have been able to arouse your interest in gaining some Islamic knowledge. And perhaps you have already started working out in your minds the need for this. Like, for example, when can I do it? Or where can I do it? Or perhaps there is someone in my community whom I can encourage to get some knowledge. I wonder what it will cost me. And these are the kind of questions might be passing through some minds. My brothers and sisters, this brings us to this institution called the Markaz al-Ihsaan, where we are right now. We are very concerned about the plight the Muslims are in as far as Islamic education is concerned. We have been established since the year 2000. Our focus is to disseminate Islamic education in an environment where every student becomes part of the Markaz al-Ihsaan family, benefiting from the warmth of our principal and staff. We are concerned about our family, and we want to help in saving them, as Allah tells us in Surah number 66, verse 6. Save yourself and your families from the fire. Our courses are structured in 3 levels, and you can see this from the handout that has been given out this morning to you. If you didn't get one yet, you can get it from the registration table there. There is no cost to these courses. Everything here is free. Even refreshments are provided free of charge. Our school time is divided into 3 trimesters, running in tandem with the secular school terms. Our class time for the Hermitage School is Saturday mornings from 8:30 to 12. We know that this might not be a convenient time for many, but we would like to begin an evening program, say maybe one day for the week, from Maghrib time, lasting for 2 hours thereafter, which we hope that other people will take advantage of the courses that we have to offer. And these information will come in a very short time. Maybe when you all have your question and answer session today, you can raise that issue and we can take it up. We also cater from people or students from the age 12 to, because remember I told you we had some 8 years and so on. Our classes in Komuto, that is the next branch of our Markaz, is on Saturdays from 5 p.m. to whatever time is Isha, inshallah. This school runs just like the one here. Most of the time it is same date and same, well, the time is not the same because in the morning is here and in the evening is here. To date, I am happy to say that several of our students attend secular and Islamic courses together, and some have been awarded with government scholarships, studying to become doctors, lawyers, etc. Many others have gone on to join Islamic organizations where they make invaluable contributions. Today we hope that after you have listened to all that we have to say, you will want to join with us in doing this work. If you are convinced that knowledge can solve problems, you can assist us in our future endeavors. We envisage that if every Jamaat can send one student to these courses, that will be one person more to do Islamic work in the communities. And as such, students will become one of the elite group Allah speaks about in chapter 9, verse 122 of the Holy Quran. A contingent from among every group should devote themselves to the study of religion and admonish the people. So this is why we ask that, if Jamaats can send at least one person, they will be from among this elite group. In closing, let us ponder on this hadith of our noble messenger, in which Abu Hurairah narrates that the messenger of Allah said, religious knowledge will be taken away by the death of religious scholars. Ignorance in religion and afflictions will appear, and harj will increase. It was asked, what is harj? And the messenger replied, killing. When we look at today, we will see that some of these things are already taking place. When we look at today, we see Islamic knowledge that is disseminating. is in parts and pieces and not like a whole package. And it leaves a lot of people in more confusion than walking away with wisdom and intelligence. We at the Markaz here, we are seeing, the students tell us of many of the things that are happening like this in the society. So let us take care that we don't live to see religious knowledge taken away from us. Rather, let us act to avoid this by encouraging its growth. Today, my topic this morning was to inform you about what this seminar is about. Simply, is to inform you that we are concerned. We want you to join with us in disseminating this Islamic education because we know that this can solve the problems that face every community, every Jamaat, every nook and cranny of this country. And if you all can assist us in this, then we would have been more successful than we are presently, inshallah. May Allah bless all of you and take you back to your home safely. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Shuffy. Shuffy was speaking here, you remember my son discussing things. If I go to do any of his work, I cannot teach him anything because he has his level of education has been so high. Clearly, Shuffy, and a clear example to me was that. But whenever he wants to learn or know something about Islam, he will come to me. And I thank Maulana Rafi Mohammed for increasing my knowledge over the years and to showing me true way of expressing Islam and being a good Muslim in this world. At this point in time, the topic we are here to discuss and to understand, I invite no other person and one of our leaders in the school, our main teachers, Faheem Mohammed, to discuss the ways and means of facing the challenges that confront the Muslims in our times. And I invite Faheem to join us.
Assalamu alaikum. And if there are any non-Muslims, is better. There we go. So, Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. And if there are any non-Muslims amongst us today, a very pleasant good morning to you all. Imam Shuffy gave us a lot of tidbits of insight, a wealth of references to consider. So, my take on it has been a bit more literal, and if you will, a bit more secular. So hopefully it would posit a different perspective on the thing. So in looking at the topic, ways and means of dealing with the challenges that face the Muslim community, the essence of it to me lies in some key questions that need to be asked. First of all, what are the challenges that we face? What are the limitations to the responses that we can pursue? And then based on that, what are the responses themselves that are available? And I intend to just treat with those 3 points fairly simply and quite quickly for all intents and purposes. So in terms of the challenges, what are the challenges that we face as Muslims in the global community today? We could use any number of different frameworks, different lenses to explore this. I have taken quite simply an external view and an internal view. We as a Muslim community, what are those things that are affecting us from outside the community, and then internally, what are those things within the community that we need to pay attention to? So on the external bit, and probably I would venture the most important one, and as well the one that gets the least amount of attention, is the whole issue of this illusion of science versus religion. And I see that as something that is critical, something that we need to be mindful of, because Islam is construed, is interpreted in our environment as a religion. All religions are under attack, and Islam is not excluded from it. And I call it an illusion because science itself today has proven to be nothing more than another religion based on the beliefs and the assumptions that they perpetuate. The danger to us is that there's an emphasis on this empirical data or the material or tangible proof, and therefore it relegates all our beliefs as some of our fundamental beliefs as myths and legends. Things like jinn and heaven and hell. You all must be so backward to be believing in things like heaven and hell and so on. That's where we're at. That's the message that we're hearing in the context of the empirical material versus the religious. And looking ahead to the generations who would be exposed to that more than we have ever been, I think that's an area that we need to pay attention to. As well, if we look at the history of it, we can appreciate as Muslims that there have been a lot of contributions through religion, in the name of religion, to the development of science. Averroes, Ibn Sina, Ibn Khaldun, and so, Rumi and Ghazali. I mean, it goes on and on. Al-Jabara for maths, etc. But as well, we can't ignore the fact that other religions being dominant have also contributed to holding back science. And in some cases, some aspects of Muslim civilization as well. So there requires a particular spin, a particular interpretation on that as we move forward, as we extend Islam in our immediate and extended environments globally. So there's this illusion of science versus religion, and the other big one that we all hear about all the time is Islam versus the West. Islamic values versus Western values. Should an individual be completely free to pursue whatever is in their best interest, or should there be limits? Who imposes those limits? Is a conversation that has been ongoing, and it's been pretty interesting to note that the advocates for the Western perspectives have taken the contentious areas of Islam and they have been merciless in highlighting it. So the hijab as a symbol, an external symbol of barbarianism and suppression of women and so on. In this contemporary era where women and men are equal to do whatever, yeah, and so on. The hijab, the slaughter for Qurbani, etc., etc. There have been a lot of attention being paid to that, almost as if it's, well, here's currency and you just spend, yeah? Here's material on Islam and you just go to town on it. That cannot be divorced from the socio-political / economic global reality, the politics of oil in the Middle East, the politics of immigration to the formerly Muslim colonies of Europe, and we've seen a lot of contention and tension within there. It's interesting to note Saddam Hussein actually raised, no, Gaddafi, sorry, actually raised it in the UN, where he said, it's widely known the enemy of an Arab is the best friend of another Arab. And it's almost as if we're seeing that play out, where within the Arab Muslim community, we're seeing some siding force against the welfare of others and so on. So, Islam versus the West. Ideologically, there is a problem or there is a conflict, and it's something that we can take up and champion as well as they have been doing. And then on the other side, in terms of the economics and so on, we are seeing some manipulations. To what extent we could address that, you're seeing efforts by OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries, and so on. And it may be in our best interest to begin to reference those things, maybe contribute to it. There are some positives that I just want to note very quickly. Islamic finance has been the most innovative aspect of global financial systems, and in a world where we're actually living through the failure or the looming failure of currency as we know it, here is something that is most likely to survive. Yeah, the Islamic financial model. So some finance experts are paying more attention to that, re-engineering Islamic financial models to something that is a bit more appealing to the Western palate. Yeah. As well, interestingly enough, the Islamic approach to jihad and terrorism and whatever other labels have been applied, whilst they cast a shadow on Islam, it's something that academia has been paying attention to. So William Starbuck, Gary Cooper, in their consideration of 21st century leadership and management issues, actually looked at that. Here is a global entity, purely voluntary, who are able to mobilize and act based on ideology, wherever they are, with or without direct connection to the base. And they looked at that in the context of Al-Qaeda, and we're seeing it now in terms of ISIS, and we saw it before with the New Jackals, and it's something that has been going on. So they are trying to understand what is it about Islam that can mobilize cells from anywhere in the world to commit, to give what is most precious, which is human life, to a cause. If we could find out that, the business side of me would, I suppose if we could find out that, man, we have volunteers for life, you know. We don't even have to pay them, you know. I mean, this is fantastic. This is exactly what we need. So a lot of attention being paid to that. So on the external side, you have science versus religion, you have Islam versus the West, and you also have some positives that are emanating that are not very well highlighted. And it is not the development of it, the research in it, is not being championed by Muslims even, it's being championed by the West. On the internal side, within the Muslim community itself, these become more evident, more apparent. These are the areas that we face almost on a daily basis. So on one part, there's the whole issue of ideology and ideological differences based on interpretation of the Quran. It was mesmerizing to me to learn in one of these courses when I took it here that from the Quran, whether it's literal or allegorical meanings in terms of interpretation, the hadith, whether it's weak or strong or whatever, comes straight down. Every source of knowledge in Islam is debated. So then how do we know that we are the right one, this one of 72 or 74, whatever it is? How could we be sure? How could we be sure that it's not the next one? And this becomes a problem. And everybody know, from my assessment, so let me just make that clear, believes they are the chosen ones or the saved ones or whatever the biblical equivalent would be. And everybody else is wrong. More fundamentally than that, I think there is need to address the issue of ijtihad, interpretation. Are we allowed to interpret? Because that is one of those fundamental divides. I think there needs to be a common Muslim position on the takfiri ideology, where it's okay to kill a Muslim if they are closer to non-Muslim behaviors or interpretations than they are to ours. I think those are the two key ones that need to be addressed, because that is causing fundamental splits in the community as we know it. That is accounting for the emergence of preachers like ISIS and Sufis on the two extremes. Yeah? But while we are fighting that fight, here comes the Pope preaching messages of peace and love and humility. And suddenly everybody's in love with the Catholic Church. And let's be clear, all he is a marketing person, you know. He is speaking to an audience in a context where their community is shrinking, their contributions are shrinking, and he is sending the right messages, and he is mobilizing as never before. Now, what does that mean for our fence line Muslims? Your guess is as good as mine. It doesn't take much for some people to make that jump, or it may not take much. So they have the Pope on one side, or preachers of peace and love. You have, you have science on the other side attacking this whole construct and concept of religion and its relevance in today's world. And what you have is the emergence now of religion-less spirituality. So let's do yoga on a Monday and a Wednesday evening at the gym. And in stretching and in doing all this stuff, we get this deep spiritual insight into breathing technique and so on and so forth. And that's what you have emerging. The extension of which is the devotees, if you will, practice yoga out in nature to reconnect with Mother Earth. And that's where we're seeing a lot of this development. An environmental consciousness, deliberately avoiding religion as one of the backlash or the responses to all of these things. Whilst we continue to argue whether the person who saw the moon was a valid witness or not. Yeah? So I mean, put yourself on the fence line and ask yourself, well, what would you lean towards? Or which direction would you take it? I think what we're seeing in the mosques, if nowhere else, what we're seeing in the schools, what Imam Shuffy mentioned in terms of the numbers pursuing religious education, tell us all we need to know. Right, the other big issue within the Muslim community, we have not, in Islam, matured a management model that bridges theology and administration. So there's constant back and forth, almost fighting. In some cases, actual fighting in Pakistan and so on, they physically kill each other. Who's in charge? Is it the theologist, the scholar, who may not be a good administrator or strategist? Is it the administrator who may not be a theologically sound referent? Well, nobody knows. And that is manifest in the organization at the micro level, and that is manifest in the community at the macro level, and therefore you have anybody, literally anybody, could stand up and say anything about Islam justify it with their own spin, and castigate 1.6 billion people in the mix. Baghdadi did it, and you had this reactive response, Baghdadi from ISIS, and you had this reactive response with almost 1,000 scholars by now lining up to condemn that ideology. You can't kill the innocent, Islam is very clear, and so on and so forth. So, the organizational model is something that we need to pay attention to. What happens as a result is what we're seeing in the context of dysfunctional politics. Organizations who are redundant, they're doing the same thing, and therefore it becomes wasted resources, or they're competing with each other. I build a mosque, oh no, I build a mosque too. Yeah? In the same location, you know, in one place I've been to is over the road from the other. It's remarkable. And it's remarkable in its inefficiency, if nothing else. So, in terms of challenges, I think these are the fundamental ones that we need to pay attention to, which, if resolved, can augur to the benefit of the community as a whole. And then beyond that, it becomes pretty straightforward. What should a response include? What should be that framework for our response? Which is how do we react, or how do we respond to the challenges that we face? Let's recognize, first of all, that there are differences between what can happen, what should happen, and what is happening. So, what is happening, that's where we are. This is the starting point. What should happen is the ideal, that's what we're working towards. What can happen in terms of possibility is something that our strategies would define and develop further. So what is happening, from my lay perspective, paying some attention, but really not that much. Everybody is forming their own little clique, their own little niche. Overwhelmingly, the majority of that attention has been events-driven. And being a promoter in a previous iteration, I could tell you there's a great emphasis on foreign acts. So Ismail Meng, and this one, and that one, and all these foreign scholars coming. To what extent does their message align with our schools of fiqh? Not really sure. To what extent are they aware of the cultural sensitivities in Trinidad and Tobago? Again, not really sure. But nobody cares, because from the promoter's viewpoint, we gained 15,000, 20,000 people. Fabulous. This event was a success. And we get volunteers to do it as per the Gary Cooper observation on the Islamic model. Well, we don't even have to pay people. When I was promoting, we had to pay people for them thing, you know. So you have foreign acts doing events, and it becomes almost entertainment. Almost. A decreasing reliance on organizations. So there was one guy, I'm not sure who he is, I remember the names are here, who was diagnosed with cancer, and this became the life-altering experience that he was waiting on. And he now goes into the communities and mobilizes resources. But you know what? We should have been doing that all along. Yeah? I commend his efforts. What could he have achieved if he had the backing of an organization? Any organization. One can only imagine, but we won't know yet, unless we get that thing fixed. So everybody is doing their own thing. There are two people I know of who, between the two of them, account for over a dozen Islamic organizations, in Trinidad and Tobago. They have registered this at one point and then that at one point and whatever. Now, what is the driver of that? I don't know. Where are the organizations today? Well, they're registered, but not much else. So certainly there are people with ideas who will take a step, but I mean it all falls down from there. Are the ideas good? Something we need to look at? Or are they political divisions for the purpose of resource mobilization or influence or whatever not? So we need to first of all decide whether those things are useful, the constructs, and then how can we fit it into the network, into the cluster, into the portfolio of Islamic organizations to take it forward. It does, this trend of everybody breaking out and doing their own thing, it does suggest some problems looking ahead, particularly in terms of the future of representation. Because as it is now, we have the organizations who are enacted in parliament and so on as the representatives of the Muslim community. But even in the recent past, we started to see some suasions towards that. People saying, "Hey, I could bring you 20,000 votes." Well, should we say that? We're recording this. I could bring you X number of whatever, and I could bring you these many people and this type of influence and so on. That will only increase. That problem will only increase if nothing is done about this. Who will control the brand of Islam is something that I would question, because if I am a militant Takfiri jihadist and I want to call down jihad on Babylon under the banner of Islam, I'm free to do so. I'm free to do that right now, in fact. And there's very little that can be done to stop it. And that's the concern. That gets worse. Let me note a couple of positives as well, and I think I would state here in the interest of full disclosure, I am involved with the Markaz in different capacities at different times, and therefore I am aware of some of the drivers behind some of these things. So I see the need for greater research in Islam. What does Islam present as ways of solutions to contemporary problems? We had the Green Deal effort, excellent initiative in terms of the natural environment, and we have in the Markaz syllabus that I'm aware of, I'm not sure how that has changed, but Muslims in minority. So what is the fate of us in a non-Muslim country, Islamic sects and groups, and well, what is the conflict and what accounts for it and what does it look like? Islamic psychology, sociology, philosophy, remarkable pieces of work. I have to say, simply because you don't see anything else like it. And I'm talking anywhere. The closest we've gotten is Ahmad Akbar from the US, who has been focusing on some nuances in Islamic theology. Beacon and some other guy in terms of leadership. But really that has been about it. You haven't seen much else. So Islamic psychology, Islamic sociology, Islamic philosophy, remarkable stuff. The course on leadership, for example, we are keeping that back. I have some deliverables for that, so my apologies. I'll be very open about that. But so research, we're starting to see some of it, and we're starting to see it in pretty interesting areas. What is the psychology of an afterlife in terms of your behavior here? The construct of salat, and how is that going to shape what you do and how you do it as a Muslim versus a non-Muslim, is something that, as an example, we need to be paying attention to. These are things we could highlight. Yeah. Apart from research, there is critical need in my review for PR/dawah/media work. And there are, at varying times, a lot of different stuff happening within there. I know the Markaz does some events from time to time, and quite a lot of media content. To what extent is that distributed is the next conversation. And then other events are happening, and to what extent are those things archived and made available is the next conversation by itself. Just to close all of this off, we could look at the model of the Muslim community in Singapore as an example of what can be. We could look at the model of the Muslim community in Pakistan as another example of what can be, both at two ends of the spectrum. So in Pakistan, the Deobandi killing the Barelvi who fighting back the Deobandi and so on. We know this. We hear about it in Karachi, we hear about it in Kashmir and Peshawar and so on. So it's been happening. And the theological interpretations can create such a divide that it becomes physical. So that's one direction we could go. And the other direction is where we have a constellation of Islamic organizations who complement each other. You focusing on dawah, fine. You focus on dawah. We focusing on fiqh, fine. We focusing on, and so on and so forth. And that's what you see to a large extent under the guise of the government's MOIS, I think. You start to see some of that. Yeah, one organization entirely dedicated to teaching Arabic and Arabic consultancy and translation services and so on. And nobody interferes with that. So you can have this cluster of complementary organizations so that we all hold in each other's hands and moving this thing forward. What it would require in the Muslim community immediately and moving forward is a change of leadership. And by that I mean not the leaders themselves necessarily, but of the mindset or the approach. Yeah? So don't go and wage bloody revolution in the next elections, wherever, right? What we need is a change in that mindset. So it's not us versus them and this one and you getting this and so on and so forth, but rather, hey, look, we carving out, we have strengths in this area, let's build that. My bias, because I'm a management background by essentially, is you need much more effective management at every level where you have representation. So from the imam at the operational grassroots level, akin to the supervisor and instructor, straight up to the executive director or president general or whatever the title is. I think if there is a focus on management, essential management skills as a profession, not a position, then we could start to see a lot more happening in terms of planning, organizing, coordinating, and control. Yeah? And I think that's something that we desperately need. And then finally, if nothing else, in terms of mobilizing the competencies, we have a lot of people who want the experience, and in fact, I'm sure he spoke to the need for learning, and initially, and the whole thing on reading. I'll just throw this out. If you have been up to date with your readings on technology and education, for example, the conversation now is knowing is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Because you don't need to know anything as long as you have access to Google, Wikipedia. Literally you don't. You don't need to. You can learn how you learn, and you could ramp up that very quickly and become an expert overnight. And more, that's what we're seeing. That's how the conversation is shifting. The emphasis now is on expertise and experience. CPD credits in the academic system, continuing professional development stuff. Show us you can do. We assume that you know, or that you can tap into the searches to get the information. And I think that is a golden opportunity for our organizations to mobilize available talent, bring them on board, and let them run with whatever the focus of the initiatives are, so that we can build those competencies and enjoy successes for the individuals in the secular system, even as we benefit from their expertise or growing expertise for our organizational purposes. And with that, I want to underline, yes, the challenges manifest in a lot of different ways. There are also a lot of positives that Rupert Murdoch and they decide we don't need to hear about. And I think we as Muslims individually should start to pay more attention to that. What are the good aspects coming out in the system? I think moving beyond that, there is need for the different organizations within the community to get their acts together. And I don't mean AXE, I mean ACTS. And I think there is a role for any one of us who is concerned enough about that to actually play. I'll probably just close it off with this reminder, where there is a hadith in which the Prophet, peace be on him, is reported to have said, every person is a leader, even if it is of themselves. But if you find that you have strengths in particular areas, and you are better than others in certain skills, I think it's expected of you, that's between you and your God, of course, but it's expected of you that you give of it, not just for your benefit, career and profession-wise, but also for the benefit of your community. And therefore, don't be afraid to get involved based on what your strengths are. Don't be afraid of the concept of leadership. It's not as romantic in Islam as it's made out to be here. And we will be held accountable for it, ultimately. I've taken a lot of time, so my apologies for that, administrators. I hope, inshallah, we could build from the Assalamu alaikum.